So this video is going to talk about problem set 2, question number 4, that deals with data from table 4 that is in frequency table form. So we have two variables in this data set. One is the actual raw score that a person could receive, and the other is the frequency variable that tells us how many individuals in that data set actually received that particular score. So we're going to do this problem setting the data up in what's called frequency table form, which is to mean that one of our variables is actually a frequency variable that tells us how many times a particular score should be counted in the data set. So for example, reading across the first row, we can see that some individuals received scores of 21, and that is marked here in this first cell, and then immediately next to it we see in the frequency of that row that only one individual received that score. So somehow we want to tell SPSS, when calculating statistics on this data, you should only count the value of 21 one time. However, we see in the second row, the next possible score that was observed was 24, and we can see in the frequency column that 3 individuals received that particular score. So we need some way to tell SPSS, even though there's only one row that has a score of 24, you need to count it as if there were 3 rows that had individuals with a score of 24, because 3 people in our data set actually received that score. The way to tell SPSS that one of our variables is actually a frequency variable and that it should be used to count particular rows more than just once is to do something called weight the cases, or weighting cases. And we can do that using the drop-down menu under Data. And if you left-click on that drop-down menu, you'll see at the very bottom of the options it says Weight Cases. Go ahead and left-click on that. Now you can see that the default is set to not weight the cases, but we in this case, because we have the data in frequency table form, want to weight them. And the question becomes, we have on the left our list of variables that we can use for weighting. Which one do we want to use to tell SPSS how many times to count each row? Well, we know that the variable raw score simply tells us the score that the person observed or received. It does not tell us how many people or how many times to count that score. It's the variable frequency that tells us the number of individuals who received that particular score. That is the variable we want to weight by. So let's go ahead and select the option Weight Cases By, then select the variable frequency, and you can insert it into the window that conveniently is called frequency variable, which is a clue that typically if you're weighting the cases, you want to weight it by frequency variable. Go ahead and click OK, and the pop-up window disappears. Now you can't see anything here that tells you that currently we are weighting the cases, but if you do go back to weight cases under the drop-down menu, you'll see that current status is set to weight cases by frequency. So we'll leave it as is. Now essentially, even though it looks like we have 2 variables and 18 rows or observations, SPSS is actually reading this as if we just had one variable called score, and we actually had far more observations. One individual who got a score of 21, 3 individuals who got a score of 24, 1 individual who got a score of 25, 4 people who got a score of 28, so on and so forth. Now we're ready to actually run analysis on our data. And in problem number 4, we're asked to create a histogram with the data. So this demonstration will also show you how to create a histogram. To create graphical representations such as a histogram, we're going to go to the drop-down menu called Graphs, left-click, and select on Chart Builder. When this pop-up window for Chart Builder pops up, go ahead and click OK to go ahead and define our chart. To create a histogram, from the options under Choose From, go ahead and select Histogram. Left-click on it once, and you'll see we have some different options for how to display our histogram. Let's go ahead and use the first option, which is a simple histogram. If you left-click and hold the left mouse button down and drag that chart up to the empty gallery area and then let go, you'll see that a histogram actually appears in the viewer. Now we have to tell SPSS what data we want plotted on this particular plot. Now recall that in a histogram, frequency is plotted on the y-axis, and on the x-axis is plotted our actual raw score or variable of interest. So let's go ahead and from our variable list, drag down to the x-axis raw score on the variable. Left-click on that variable and drag it down to the x-axis. When you release it, you'll automatically see that your x-axis now indicates that you have the raw score on the variable on your x-axis. Now, because we selected histogram, SPSS knows that we want frequency on the on the y-axis. So we actually don't have to put anything else in that window. We're actually done now creating a histogram. All we have to do is click the OK button in the chart builder. When we do so, you'll see that the histogram will appear in your output window that tells us how many times each particular score occurred. Now, this is a grouped frequency distribution because, as you can see, the interval width of each of our bars, or what we call bins, is greater than 1. So the first bar represents scores of 20 up to 25. The second bin or bar represents a score of 25 up to 30. So we're actually getting the frequency from that entire interval inside of that. SPSS will automatically determine what the most convenient interval width is for your histogram, and in this class we're not going to talk about changing that. It's acceptable to go with whatever SPSS deems as appropriate. That's it for teaching you how to create a histogram using frequency table data or data in frequency form, and I'll see you next time for another problem.